Yes, hello again and welcome back to the latest episode of Classic Dirt Bike TV, where we take a look at some of those old vintage and classic race bikes from way back in our past, and then just try and decipher exactly what it was that made these old racers so popular way back in the day. Now, once again, thanks to everybody for their recent comments on my last few video postings. It's nice to know that these videos are being watched in countries all over the world. So hello to you in your own respective country, and I hope you continue to enjoy my material here on my Classic Dirt Bike channel. Okay, coming up next, we're going to take a look at a couple of nice 1989-1990 RM250 Suzuki Slingshot Evolution bikes. Now, these bikes belong to Scottish rider Robbie Allan. Now, these Suzukis are not a bike that you see too readily in the paddock these days, but we're going to take a look now at these nice pair of bikes from Robbie Allan. So without any further delay, let's just jump straight into the video. Now, this very nice pair of Suzukis, as I said, belong to Scottish racer Robbie Allan. Now, Robbie comes from a quite well-known Scottish motorcycle racing family, and of course you may remember the great Robbie Allan Sr. and of course Vic Allan and Jimmy Allan, who were all very successful racers in their day, and they took part in almost every conceivable discipline of motorcycle sport for many years. Now, Robbie Jr. here is a retired police officer of 30 years, and Robbie now fills his time by doing what the rest of the generations of Allans have done for the last 50 years or so, and that's ride and enjoy motorcycles. Now, Robbie, it's pretty fair to say, has a good collection of old dirt bikes in his workshop, and in the past he operated his Robbie Allan Off-Road Experience facility at Tinto Motor Park, where he taught motorcycle enthusiasts how to ride dirt bikes off-road. Although on his day off, Robbie still likes to take part in these type of scrambles, and that's why he brought along this very nice pair of Suzuki RM250 Slingshots to this Scottish Twin Shock and Evolution event that was being held at Pow Mill in Scotland. Now, Robbie did tell me on the day that both of these bikes are not fully original examples, because he said he used parts from both the 1989 and 1990 bikes, but nevertheless you still don't see many of these 250 Slingshots at race events these days, so it's quite good just to take a look at two examples here in one place. Now, for the late 1980s, Suzuki were still using this chrome moly steel frame, which they say was a lighter, slimmer design from the previous 1988 machine, but this example here was a completely redesigned chassis and a vast improvement over the older bike. Now, one of the other redesigns of this Suzuki frame was that it didn't have a removable subframe, but what it did give you was the single alloy removable arm on the left hand side of the bike, so that you could access or remove or replace the rear shock. So it was basically a semi-removable subframe. Now, the motor was of course Suzuki's AETC power plant, or automatic exhaust timing control, to give it its full name, which was basically Suzuki's interpretation of a power valve that just raised and lowered a sliding valve in the engine's exhaust port. And of course, earlier 1988 Suzy engines would have been painted in blue, although for 89 Suzuki then changed with this silver more mundane colour in that year. Now once again, the motor, as I remember, I think it had a 5-speed gearbox, and riders used to comment on how easy it was to shift gears on this motor, because the slightest bit of weight onto the shifter would either make you select a cog that you didn't want, or you'd be left with a handful of neutrals. Now in terms of the Suzuki's Slingshot abbreviation, this was more really in reference to this 38mm Mikuni Slingshot carburetor, which according to Suzuki used a unique throttle slide that was said to combine the best traits of a round slide carburetor, which is said gave it better sealing and low turbulence in the chamber, and the best characteristics of a flat slide, which also gave it a quicker response. But in reality, I personally think it was just another one of these Suzuki sales gimmicks. Although overall the word is that this was quite a decent two-stroke motor, which unfortunately had very little in the bottom end of the motor, and it kind of ran out of puff when you were screaming it at the top end. But keep it in the mid-range where its sweet spot was, and work that gearbox, then you could certainly hustle it around the racetrack. Now also back in 1989, these Slingshot Suzukis, I think, would have been fitted with a pair of 41mm Kayaba upside down cartridge type forks, as I remember, and these were decent enough for their time, although it certainly looks like Robbie here has fitted a set of Showa replacements on this particular bike, which I'm sure will be equally good, if maybe not better, than the Kayaba originals. But of course a single monoshock suspension unit at the rear, and again this looks like a good quality shock that Robbie has on this featured bike, and they say that the rear setup on these Suzukis were reasonably good, but maybe not as good as, say, a KX or a CR Honda of the same year. And once again, this alloy box section swing arm was part of Suzuki's full floater rear suspension system, and this was certainly a heavy duty piece of kit, as you can see here, although that rear brake disc and the black wheel of course are not original parts, but I expect they'll still do an amicable job of slowing down this wee Suzy when it's required. Now once again, at the business end of this bike, a set of modern rental handlebars and levers and grips, and of course that all important engine cutout switch, which is mandatory for racing at Scottish Twin Shock Classic and Evolution events. But this is still a very nice pair of Suzuki Slingshots, and it's great just to see them being raced as opposed to them being locked away in some dusty museum. But as you've no doubt gathered, this is not an original seat, but is a bit of a psychedelic replacement, probably to go along with that yellow and blue theme of the rest of the bike. Although, as I said, these older 1989-1990 Slingshots are not that common these days, although there are one or two still going around, other than of course this nice pair here of Robbie Allan's. Although if you can lay your hands on a good 1989 example and then set it upright with regards the tuning of the motor and the front and rear suspension settings, then this can still be a bike that you can be competitive on. But these old Slingshot 250 Suzukis are a dying breed these days, and it's thanks to the likes of riders like Robbie who still use and maintain them And although this pair here is maybe not the real deal from that 1989 year, it's still irrelevant really, because it's much more important that we keep these kind of bikes on the track where we can still see them in the natural environment, rather than of course looking at them in a museum or maybe at a classic dirt bike show. Well, there you have it. I do hope you enjoyed that quite brief look around Robbie Allan's quite nice pair of Suzuki RM 250 Slingshot Evolution bikes. Certainly, of course, not original bikes from 1989 or 1990, but nonetheless a bike that you very seldom see in race paddocks in this modern day. Now, coming up in my next video posting, we're going to take a short break from actually looking at a full-blown motorcycle to take a look at this quite radical BSA B50 engine. Now, this is a motor that was being developed by CCM way back in the day, and this is a radical 5-stroke BSA motor. So we'll be taking a look at this engine in my next video posting, and also included in this next video we'll be taking a look at this CCM motocross sidecar chassis. Now, this was apparently the only one of its kind that CCM ever built, so we'll also be taking a look at this quite rare sidecar chassis in my next video posting here on my channel. So until then, of course, I hope you will all continue to keep safe and well when you're out there riding those old vintage racers, and we'll all get back together here again quite soon to talk about more vintage iron on your #1 and favourite classic dirt bike TV channel.